Hey folks, this is the third and final video breaking down intervals. If you haven't watched videos 1 and 2, I strongly encourage you to go back and check those out, as the material in this video is built on those two. So in the first couple of videos we talked about different types of seconds, thirds, and fourths. In this video we're going to finish up with fifths, sixths, and sevenths. And we're going to use the same principle as before. We're thinking about combinations of whole steps and half steps for our interval formula and making sure to remember the musical alphabet. So we're going to start with our first fifth. This is one of the most common types of fifths we're going to encounter, and it's called a perfect fifth. Now that's a sound that we hear all the time, and it's one of the easiest sounds to naturally harmonize with our voice. But let's break down what the intervals are. So a perfect fifth is a whole step, plus a whole step, plus a half step, plus a whole step. So you can think whole, whole, half, whole for a perfect fifth. So we'd say that a perfect fifth above C is G. If we continue with this model of ascending perfect fifths, I'll start on, let's say, the note A flat. A perfect fifth above A flat would be E flat. That's because a whole plus a half plus a whole gives us that interval. And we use the same thing descending. So going back to C, we'd say that a perfect fifth below C is F. Again, same interval formula, whole, whole, half, whole. Now that's just one of the two types of fifths. We also have what's referred to as an augmented fifth. You might remember from the first video when we talked about the augmented second how augmentation, when we're talking about intervals, refers to adding a half step. So if we have this G, we're going to raise it a half step or augment it to G sharp. So C to G sharp is an augmented fifth. The interval formula that you can use to remember an augmented fifth is whole, 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 whole. So whole, 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 whole. 4 whole steps, right? So we'd say that an augmented fifth above C is G sharp. To use another example, let's take a perfect fifth starting on B flat. Now a perfect fifth above B flat is F. Now we can use one of the two methods. The first one I described, where we simply take a perfect fifth and raise the fifth a half step. Well, guess what? Now we have an augmented fifth. So a perfect fifth would be B flat ascending to F sharp, and an augmented fifth above B flat would be an F sharp. We can also use the 4 whole steps approach. Whole plus whole plus whole plus whole. So an augmented fifth above B flat is F sharp. The last type of fifth we're going to talk about is a diminished fifth, which, not surprisingly, we take the perfect fifth and we diminish or lower it a half step. This is enharmonically equivalent, or sounds the same, as an augmented fourth, which was the last interval we looked at in the second video of these 3. So if we're taking a look at a diminished fifth, we'd say that G flat is a diminished fifth above the note C. Now we can apply this to just about any note that we want to, right? So let's start on the note G. Take some time to guess the answer to this one using the process described. So what would be a diminished fifth above G? Take a few seconds. If you guessed D flat, you are correct. Now, you may have used one of the two methods. You may have said, well, I'm going to do a perfect fifth and diminish that D and lower it to a D flat. That's a great method. You may have also said, I'm going to think 3 whole steps. Whole, whole, whole. That's a good method too, but just beware that you don't want to run into the trap of thinking G, A, B, C sharp. Remember, we still have to do 5 letters apart in the musical alphabet. So G, I'll start here, G, A, B, C, D. So it's a fifth, so if we're starting on a G of some type, we have to end on a G of some type. Okay, so that's fifths. We're going to jump now into sixths. Same principle as before, we're just going up 1 more letter in the alphabet. So we'd say that a major sixth above C is A. the interval formula for a major sixth is whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So A is a major sixth above C. We can also go the opposite direction with this formula. So let's pick the note F sharp. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole. So if we're thinking that, a whole step below F sharp, a whole step, a half step, a whole step, and a whole step. So we would say that a whole step, we would say that a major sixth below F sharp is A. The other type of sixth that we see is what's referred to as a minor sixth. You might remember that augmented fifth I talked about a few minutes ago in this video. Minor sixth is enharmonically equivalent to an augmented fifth. Minor sixth is basically 4 whole steps. But you can also think about it as a major sixth, and we are lowering that sixth a half step. So we'd say that A flat is a minor sixth above C. Now we can use the same process going downward, right? E is a minor sixth below C, because 4 whole steps below C is E. Just make sure when you're doing those 4 whole steps that you're thinking of the musical alphabet. C, B, A, G, F, E. Okay, this brings us to sevenths. We've got the minor seventh. Now again, as you've seen with the last 2 videos in this video, we're just thinking about the musical alphabet. So we know that if we're starting on the musical alphabet note name of C, that above is going to have to be some type of B. C, D, E, F, G, A, B. 7 letters of the alphabet. And keep in mind that this is why we only have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 before we hit the octave and start all over again, because the musical alphabet historically originated before the 12-note chromatic scale. Okay, so that little aside for a second, a minor seventh is going to be the following interval formula. Whole, whole, half. Whole, whole, half. So whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half. Right? It's actually one of the easiest ones to remember if you think about it that way. So we'd say that a minor seventh above C is B flat. Now there's a trick with minor sevenths, and the next type of seventh I'll show you, which is you can actually also figure it out this way. Go up an octave from whatever note you're starting on, and to find the minor seventh above your starting note, go down 2 half steps from the octave. And apologies for that horrendous fingering I did there, right? So you could do this for any note, right? Let's say we're starting on the note A flat, and somebody says, what's a minor seventh above A flat? Well, go an octave above our starting note, and then go down 2 half steps from that higher note. G flat is a minor seventh above A flat. Right? We can use the same process if we're going downwards. So let's say I want to figure out what a minor seventh below A flat is. Well, I'll go down an octave and then up 2 half steps. So B flat is a minor seventh below A flat. This brings us to the last interval before we hit the octave, or perfect eighth. This is called the major seventh. And this one's actually pretty easy if you already know your major scales, because all you have to think of is it's the 7th note of a major scale. So if we're playing a C major scale, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that 7 is your major 7. But if you don't play an instrument, you're not used to practicing scales, you don't really fully understand the layout of the keyboard yet, don't worry. Another strategy you can use is your starting note, go up an octave, and then go down a half step. There's your major 7th. If you don't like that method, yet another method you can do is this interval formula. Whole, whole, half, whole, whole, whole. Right? So a major 7th above C would be B. If we use that same pattern of whole, whole, half, whole, 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 going below C, whole, whole, half, whole, whole, half. A major 7th below C is D flat. And this brings us finally to the easiest interval to remember, which is a perfect eighth or octave. Apologies for my out-of-tune piano here. But that is an octave or perfect eighth. One thing I strongly recommend doing is going through each of these intervals every day very slowly on different pitch levels and practicing them different ways. What do I mean by that? Well, let's say that you spend 10 minutes today just doing minor seconds, right? So you're going to practice identifying minor seconds starting on any note at random. Now, we've been mostly doing these on C and a few other notes, but literally close your eyes and whatever note your hand lands on is going to be the note that we pick. So we start on this note and you say, oh, okay, it looks like I landed on a flat, right? So we could say, okay, what's a half step or minor second below A flat? G. Play that over and over again. This is so you can visually see a representation of that sound, but also hear what it sounds like. Vocalists, I cannot stress the importance of this enough, especially if you don't already play an instrument. If you don't have access to a piano or keyboard, get a keyboard app and just practice playing this on the keyboard and then singing the interval. Instrumentalists, I strongly recommend the following. If you're used to not really doing ear training or singing notes, take the time to actually sing minor second, or half step, so that when you're playing your instrument, you're not just blindly pushing a button from muscle memory, you're actually ingraining in your body, sonically and aurally, the sound of a minor second. And when you get comfortable doing this, descending minor seconds and ascending minor seconds, practice playing both notes together at the same time and only singing one of them. So, so I'm singing the lower note and this will really help you to hear harmony. Some intervals are easier than others. For example, a perfect fifth. So it's pretty easy to sing, for example, the fifth against the lower note. That's what we call a very consonant interval. Distant intervals like seconds, especially minor seconds and major seconds, things like augmented fourths, minor sevenths, those are going to be a little trickier to hear. I recommend starting with thirds, minor thirds and major thirds, perfect fourths, perfect fifths, minor sixths, major sixths, and of course the octave. Those are good consonant intervals to practice, and then you can move on to the more difficult to hear intervals like seconds and sevenths. So I encourage you to do this as part of your daily practice routine. If you're somebody who already practices vocal warm-ups as a vocalist, incorporate this piano practice we're talking about, or again, if you don't have a piano keyboard app practice. If you're an instrumentalist who hasn't really done any singing or ear training, take the time to actually play these at your instrument and then sing the interval so that you can ingrain it and hear it.